Hey, good morning, everybody. It's Hammer. Today is Wednesday, April 10th, 2024. I, of course, am with Originator Success, here with your daily mortgage rate update, the only place on the web where you guys get to join me live each and every day at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time to talk about what's going on with rates and pricing. Not a good conversation today. Today, we've got a choice to make, y'all. Do we start the day with the Original Sin Black Widow cider or with the LaCroix? It's kind of a toss-up. 9:30 in the morning. Today's the kind of day that if you're going to drink, start early. That is what we have seen as far as a reaction with bonds. So let's talk about it. But if you are here live, say good morning. If you're watching on the replay, don't forget to give me a hashtag replay in the comments. Let me know that you are here, whether you're here live or on the replay. Don't forget to smash that like button, tag an hello friend, share us in the group. Remember, you can sign up and get our written email lock advice, www.ratelockadvice.com. You can sign up for our text alerts at www.ratetextalerts.com. You can also find out how we help you to get loans from Google and social media. Check us out at originatorssuccess.com. And if you'd like to be reminded that I go live each and every day and you just want a little text reminder with a quick link so you can jump in and see what's going on, check us out at hmmr.io, hammer.io/reminder. All right, well, let's go ahead and say hi, and then we'll get to the ugly stuff because we don't want to lose our manners. We're nice, civilized, happy people. So let's start off by saying hi to the live folks here this morning, and we'll go from there. So we got Kelly Cargo, good morning. Roud here, ready. Real estate team, good morning. Mike Tebow, good morning. I see a Facebook user. Is that you, Tom Dedmore? We got Ron Siegel this morning, James Mahan, Jack Straw, Mallory Fotiadis, Mike Morano, Trey Pennington, Allison Foy. Somebody said, my bad, took in some contracts, which means rates increase. Yeah, right. Isn't that always seem the case? Crystal said I'd go straight to the vodka. Crystal, today's a drinking day. If you are a mortgage originator, it is a drinking day. For sure. I agree with you about going to the vodka. Good morning, Mallory Fotiadis, Megan Lindberg, Kenny Rivard, Harry Dennis. Great to see all of you here. John Jones, Zell Rayleigh, Deb Richardson. Someone said rates. All right. Who is this? Let me know who that is. It's a good thought process behind it. Rates are going to 8%. If you just have that as your mentality, you won't be surprised. But let me tell you why it's not that bad. And we're not going to see rates that are going to go to 8%. But yeah, and Tom Dedmore, let me get you that link real quick, my friend. If you are, if you like Tom are showing up as Facebook user, here is the link to fix it. I'm putting it in the comments here, which I don't know where that shows up. But if you go to chat.restream.io/FB, that's how you fix that. So, all right, let's hit to the hard stuff first. The actual CPI data came in higher than expected, right? So the key thing here, it all came in worse than expected. The actual numbers, let me see if there's a decent, here we go, one with the chart, right? So the actual numbers here, let me make this over here. Let me put my little happy face over here, close this out. All right, so the actual numbers that we're looking at here, the metrics, the CPI headline data, the month over month came in at 0.4 over 0.3. Now, one thing to note about these, they get rounded to the nearest tenth. These are rounded numbers. So I think it was actually like 0.36. But so if it had come in at 0.34, it would have been rounded down to 0.3. But 0.36, so it's not even 0.2. We got to go back to math class. Remember our columns, right? It was tenths, then hundredths. So 0.02 of a point is what's making a difference in your rates right now. That's where all of this reaction is coming from. And I don't want that to be wasted on you because it is, the reaction that we get versus what it really should be. And we'll see how much of that settles in. So the month over month was 0.4 over 0.3. The core CPI month over month, which takes out food and energy, was 0.4 over 0.3, the same as the headline. The year over year is 3.5 versus 3.4. And the core was 3.8 instead of 3.7. Now, again, these are rounded numbers, so it's not even as big of a thing as it looks right here. Now, what I generally don't do, because we could spend 40 minutes talking about this stuff, I don't go deep over what actually made all these changes or what we saw, but I want to bring this up and show you a couple of things. First of all, a lot of the changes were in insurance, car insurance, things like that, right? We saw a lot of movement there, housing expenses. And actually, let's go to the article. I'll pull this back out of the way for a minute. Let's go to the article here. So, shelter, gasoline prices drive over half of U.S. CPI gains. The core CPI tops the forecast again, likely delaying Fed rate cuts. Well, is that what's going to happen? Yes. The Fed futures, the idea of a June cut has, look at this. The page is so slow to respond right now because it's probably so overwhelmed. Let me wait and see if it clicks over. The chance of a June cut went from, we were looking at 60% expectation of a June cut. Remember, it was 60 that we would see a cut, 40 that it would stay the same. This is not even changing. Hopefully, I might have to refresh the page. Oh, here it goes. I see it doing its little thing here. Let's wait for it. It was like 20% now. It was down to like 20% chance of a cut. July, also, here you go. So the expectation of a cut, 23% in June. There's even expectation that we could see rate hikes. This is what the initial reaction is, and it's scary. When we look at July and what we see here, that now is less than 50% that we will see a rate cut in July. So we have seen this idea of a rate cut get pushed all the way farther into the year. And this is a big deal. The idea of where we will end the year, this is the last one that we want to be looking at. It is now expected. Look at this. We were at 33% yesterday. I don't even know if let's see if we do the compare. This poor thing is running so slow right now. Their website's getting inundated. Everyone's looking for data and information. All right, there you go. So if you can look at this with me, just yesterday, we were 33% expected to be at 4.5. We were at 20% to be at 4.25. All right, look at this, 33 to be at 4.5. That is down to 18% now. The expectation, 35% that we'll only see 2 rate cuts. And there's an expectation that we may only see 1. That is what markets are now looking at. So what we are seeing is a very, very strong move. Hi, Jessica Wells, Chris Perfor, Lisa Bollinger, Tiffany Singleton, Mike Brown. All right. This is why we're seeing that. So this is the core consumer price index, and this is 3 months annualized change, 6-month annualized change, and a 12-month change. So the darkest one is the 12-month, and you can see that that's been going down, the 12-month. But look at if they take the numbers and you took the last 3 months and you annualized it, did it over the year, we would be expecting to see inflation is going up. When we look at the 6-month annualized, we are seeing inflation going up. And that's the concern here. That's why this is such a big deal. Remember what the Fed is worried about right now. They're worried about what happened to Volcker in the 70s, where they took their foot off the pedal for, to try to soften things up after they saw inflation go down, and then inflation reemerged and they had to start hiking again. This report, it's really not, it's not as brutal as it reads, right? When you look at where in these data, and again, I don't usually go into the actual report itself, and I could pull it up and we could go through line by line. I like to watch Meet Kevin on YouTube, and he breaks down as he goes through the whole thing, and it makes it really easy. And you look at where this whole thing is going and where all this data is coming up from. And at the end of the day, it is brutal. So anyway, this morning, I don't have to tell you, rate sheets, right? The worst of the year. They're hammered. Probably going to see rates today take a beating of about 0.25%. I think you will see rates move up 0.25%. However, the question is, where do we go from here? I'm going to come back to that. As far as reprice risk on the day, it's low. The damage was done all at once. Look at this. If we look at mortgage-backed securities, let me refresh this. If you look at this page and you see the move, we dropped 70 basis points straight down when the data came out. So you can see it. Now I have to, hold on, I got to adjust this so I can bring this up higher so you can see it. All right. You can see it right here. I mean, look at this straight line down. It is just like dropping a brick off a building. We were at 99, 90, 99.08, 0.05, right? We were actually just doing well this morning. And if that data had come in just a little bit better, we'd be singing a totally different song. But remember, that data, it's not even a full 1/10 of a point different. It's hundredths of a point different. And then it rounds, which makes it look worse. But we saw a huge drop. Because we saw this huge drop so early and so significantly, I feel like this is probably the worst that it's going to get today. I don't think it's going to trigger more selling. We're seeing a little bit of a recovery. Our low on the morning, we were down. You can see this candlestick here. And let me pull this up to 3 months so you can see them a little bit bigger, right? Actually, let's do a 1 month just so you can really get it. All right, there we go. So looking at this, looking at this candlestick here, you can see that we were, let me just move this back off the screen. Looking at this candlestick, you can see that we've got a bit of a tail. That means that we came all the way down to this level. Now, along the way, we broke through this purple 200-day moving average. We have since come up, and the body is where we're at right now. So we started up here. We worked our way down. Bear with me, I had to turn my heater off. I'm a little dry-throated here. Thank you, Mike. I see your kind words. So looking at what we've got going on, this is here. Here's my take on this. And I know that it's kind of long-winded. I have a pretty, let me make this full screen so you guys can see this like this. Let me pop my thing here. Let me turn this off. Okay. So let me pull this up and we're going to bring this back to 6 months. Now, what I did is I brought up the dates here. We've got our January 11th, February 13th, and March 12th. So January 11th, if we go all the way back here, January 11th was right here. This is actually when we got good data and we actually saw improvement, but then we went down a little and it popped back up. Right? You see that here. So we had some good data, then we had some other stuff and it popped back up. Now, you can see the next one. Look at this giant red. It's so obvious. Look at the huge red candlestick that we have. And I'm going to do this on 3 months so you can see it. This huge red negative candlestick looks just like today. Look at this. Looks just like today. We started out the day before at 99.25, ended the next day at 98.50. We lost about 75 basis points, very similar to where we're at right now. This was when that February data came out. The reason this was such a big deal, it was the first report that was showing that inflation wasn't going down. And if you remember, when we looked at Fed futures, that was the report that took the March rate cut off the table. And that's why we saw such a strong reaction, is because that one took the March rate cut off the table. Now, look at what happened after that. The next day, we saw some recovery after that huge drop. We saw recovery the day after and the day after. Then it kind of fell down. And then we spent a lot of time right around this 200-day moving average. Now, again, I'm not telling you that prior activity is going to lead to the exact same result, but I think we're going to see something very similar here. It's what I believe is going to happen, because just like here, we saw a fundamental shift. This shift before this February data, Markets were anticipating that the Fed was going to cut rates as much as 6 times, that we were going to see a 1.5 rate cut. That's what was being talked about before that February data. And it created a fundamental shift that said, whoa, okay, the March cut's off the table. We're not going to see 1.5% drop in Fed funds rate this year. We're not going to see 6 different rate cuts this year. And they reassessed. And when we saw that reassessment, what happened to rates back then? Well, remember, rates sucked in February for basically a couple of weeks after. And I think that's what's going to happen here. Now, we need to wait and see and before we respond. So today, my advice today would be to float. Hold on right here. Float. I'm going to put this up on the screen so you guys can see it. All right. So my advice today is to float. We have to see what happens next. Now, very similar. We broke through the 200-day moving average. The next day we came up. The next day we came up. So I think that's very likely what we're going to see something similar happen here. Look at the 10-year. Remember, this was on what date? February 13th. Let's take a look at the 10-year on February 13th. It's right here. Let's talk about what happened to the 10-year. We were down here at 4.18. The next day it went up to 4.32. Went up. That's 24 basis points. No, 14. 4.10, 28. Yeah, so it's 14 basis points that it went up right here. We saw the same thing. Look at this. It's almost the exact same size. Yesterday, we were at 4. Come on. Yesterday at 4.36. Today, we're at 4.5. That's 14 basis points. Let me zoom in on this so you guys can see this. All right. You see what I'm saying here? So we saw this negative reaction on that meeting. The next day, we got some improvement. Now, I know you could argue there was support here, but I don't think that was a big part of the play. And then it got better for a couple of days, and then it kind of settled into this. I think we're going to see something very similar. The reaction that we're seeing today, I wouldn't lock anything today. I think we're seeing the worst reaction we're going to see today. I don't think we're going to get any reprices worse, but I don't think that it's going to get much better today. However, we have a chance to see it improve over the next couple of days. The main thing from there, though, look what happened. After markets settled in with the news, they came back down. Remember, this is 10-year Treasury yield. We want to see it go down. It came back down. Look at mortgage-backed securities. Same thing happened. They go in the opposite direction. They go up. We came down. We settled in. They reassessed, and then it goes up. So what does this mean? It means that if you've got a loan that's closing in the next couple of weeks, then you're not likely to see significant improvement from here. We want to wait, not necessarily lock today at the worst of it, but you're going to see rates that aren't much better than where they were a couple of days ago, maybe a little worse. If we have loans that are closing 30, 45 days from here, we don't want to lock them in yet. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, but that comment before about rates going up to 8%, they're not going to go up to that unless there becomes more of a concern that the Fed would actually have to hike rates. Now, looking at Fed futures, we're not seeing that yet. Okay. The end of the year, the expectation is that 1 or 2 rate cuts, but there is no expectation that we're going to be higher at the end of the year. Okay. We would have to see a huge shift to an expectation of rates going higher, which would actually mean we'd have to see inflation get much worse than just this little bit of a change that we saw here, which, as I've already said multiple times, even though 0.4 is 0.1% higher than the 0.3 estimate, it didn't really come in this way because they round from the hundredths, and the actual numbers were like 0.36. So it gets rounded. If it had been 0.34, it would have been rounded lower. And instead, so you're talking a difference of 0.2 hundredths to get this. This is not a panic inducing situation with the CPI yet. But it is one that's definitely going to pay attention. Between the labor market, which we've already picked apart why the labor market is what it is, and it's not as strong as what the headline numbers would have you believe, all this other stuff. So let's take some of your comments. You guys are doing a lot of chatting, and I'm ignoring you, and I hate doing that. So let's talk about what you guys think. Tiffany said, I remember why we came up. Jerome Powell smiled that day. Reaction was positive. Mike Thibault definitely has a knee-jerk reaction to the headline number. It's a knee-jerk reaction actually to the core number. The core is more of a concern. People expect the headline number to go up. Ron Siegel said, you don't look at the internals of the CPI, but housing was up. Yeah, and that's what I said, Ron. I don't dive deep on it here, but I do look at them. And before I get on, I do know rent continued to increase, demand as we try to house all the illegals coming into the country. And that's not politics. People are going to make this about politics, especially for the next few months. It's not politics. It's all in there, right? There will be just some discussion at what point as to what is happening with inflation to housing. Remember, there was also a lot of, if I remember correctly, there was a lot of insurance. There was auto insurance that went up, health insurance, health care costs have all gone up. They're all part of the inflationary inflationary numbers and why things have gone up. Those things have become more expensive and they're not going back down. There was a jump in a couple of silly categories, but that's really what we're seeing is all that same things. Reading the rest of Ron's comment that doesn't show up on the screen, there'll be some discussion at some point as to what is happening with inflation without housing, which is actually what the PCE does. It has a lower weighting on the housing component. So Ron, you are a very educated and smart man on this stuff, and that's a good thing to point out, is that the PCE may actually be a little bit better for us before we get to that May meeting. Now, that's what we've got for the next thing. So tomorrow we're going to get wholesale inflation, which is going to probably show also that we've seen higher inflation. It has much less of a reaction on mortgage rates than the consumer inflation data. Paul said, why don't they show the hundredths versus the tenths? Only a 0.02 increase is virtually the same. I don't know why. I don't know how it's done and set up that way, Paul, but I do know that traders look at it. And that's why I think that this reaction that we saw will get some kind of a little bit of a pullback to it. John Jones, taking back the savings we gave everyone 3 years ago with low rates. Yeah, very much so. What this does show us, though, is it's very unlikely we're going to see rates that are going to get significantly down out of the 6s and 7s. I mean, the high 6s and 7s is really what I should be saying for conventional. When you're looking at Govy stuff, mid 6s, and we can have a very healthy market to it. What's going to happen? It's going to take time no matter what, right? We're not going to see the number of transactions increase until we see some greasing of the wheels in the housing market. What has to happen is that people with low interest rates, they're going to have to either be forced to refinance for debt consolidation because they're drowning and they have built up a lot of equity, and they're going to need to get out from under these ridiculous car loans, ridiculous credit cards, and they're going to have higher interest rates, but it'll give them better payments, and that'll kind of bring us through, right? That's what's going to happen for, I want to say 6 months to a year. I think that we're going to see that. And then once people have higher mortgage rates, they can stomach the idea of moving to other houses with similar mortgage rates. And mortgage rates will creep lower at some point. They're not going to just drop, though. There's no reason, as long as people can borrow money and pay these bills, there's no reason for the Fed to have to cut rates, because employment remains strong, because companies are making money and they're not laying people off, because people are spending money they don't have, but they're spending money. Mike said, let's go through some of your other comments here. And Scott said, we have been hypnotized by low rates the last 10 years. If you look historically at rates, the average is around 5%. Yeah. And, but 7% is a big swing above 5%, especially with affordability. Housing prices are tough. And there's a shift in the housing market. We're seeing a lot of investor purchases and things like that. I got to watch my time, guys. We're really running long today. Robert Bashir, I'm curious to see what's going on, what happens if student loan forgiveness passes. They're constantly pushing that. And again, it seems to always manage to happen right around the elections. Last time it was during the congressional elections. Now it's the presidential election. Hammer, can you share the link from Facebook user? I'm unable to click that. Yes, let me see. I don't know if I can. I can't copy and paste. Crap. Yeah, no, I can't copy and paste it either, Ron. I'm sorry. It does not allow me to, no, I don't want to block this person. It does not allow me to do anything but show it on the screen. So I don't have any connection to that one either. It's in the Facebook group though. Robert Bashir's Mike T by 4 offer sitting on my desk. And yeah, guys. So again, I'm going to put this up on the screen. I think we're going to see rates that are going to, today is, I think what we're going to see is the worst. Now we want to watch some of these technicals because we're watching that 10-year treasury. I have this refreshing. The 10-year treasury is hitting that 4.49, 4.5 mark. 4.5 is the line in the sand for the 10-year. And I think we're going to see a recovery over the next couple of days for this. As far as mortgage rates, I think we're going to see mortgage-backed securities work to pull up, just like we saw here. They're going to work to pull up back above the 200-day moving average. They'll fluctuate around that 200-day moving average. And then I think we'll see some kind of recovery at some point from here. Loans that have more time, I think, have the best chance of seeing it. Are banks still sending out introductory rate credit card offers? That I have no idea. Thankfully, I haven't had to look at any for me. Good morning, Casey. Looking to see if there's any other comments from y'all that I missed. All right. So Crystal said, are you saying I should have locked my 45 and 60-day guys? I have at the end of May closings. No, I would not lock those. Again, I don't have a crystal ball, Crystal. I don't have a crystal ball, Crystal. But I would not have locked them. Looking back, I would not have locked them. Again, I can only say what I think is going to happen, and I'm looking at past performance, right? This was February 13th. When you turn around and you look less than a month later, we had seen rates that were tremendously better than what they were right before that situation. Then they dropped, then they came up, then they dropped. We are not necessarily going to come up huge, but looking where we're at now, where we were last week, where we're dropping, I think that will come back up and we will hit these levels again. I think it might take a couple of weeks, but I think we'll be there. Why? Because markets are going to settle into the idea that we are eventually going to see the Fed have to cut rates, and then it's just higher for longer. There's no rate hikes on the table. And as long as that's the case, we'll be in a pretty decent situation. Ron hit the nail on the head. He said, markets always overreact. Stay patient, grab a Bloody Mary, and relax. Good morning, Mason Long. Great to have you here, sir. Dan Crowley as well. Mike, I've noticed many times the mortgage securities have that open. I have more users. Yes, and thank you. So, all right, that's it, y'all. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. Hold on a second. Crystal said, seeing as a crystal, I should have a crystal ball. Yeah, you need to be our crystal ball, Crystal. So anyway, y'all, I know that today is going to be a brutal day. Tough conversations all around. But and I said this the last couple of days that I felt there was a real shift happening where we were seeing that June cut come off the table. This is just like what we saw when the March cut went off the table. Once we saw March come off, May was also off pretty quickly. Now we're seeing June. And let's just hit the CME one more time before I jump off for you, right? So if we look at the June is off the table, basically. Now they're looking at less than basically a 20% chance that we'll see a rate cut. July, very similarly, less than 50% chance of a rate cut now in July. Markets are expecting that we don't see a rate cut until possibly September. Even that now, that's the new June. Look, that was 70% expectation of a rate cut, but not until September. And the idea now that we only see one or maybe two rate cuts for the year. And we'll see. I think we're going to kind of see this shift back. And it wouldn't take long to see that change. We just need some data showing that it's more that it needs to come. Mike said, MBS opened at what and where are they now? Let me show you that real quick, Mike. So MBS they opened before the data at 99.08. They're at 98.16. So we've lost almost 100 basis points. We're at 77 basis points down right now. We saw a little bit of a recovery. Now we're starting to see a little bit more loss again. What we're hoping not to see is an avalanche scenario where let me share my screen. Sorry. Here you go. So we were up here, dropped straight down. We saw a little bit of recovery. We're losing that, which I don't like. Hopefully that bounces back, but I would expect to see some volatility here. And this was the big thing. And this is what I did not think that we would see as strong of a reaction as we're seeing here. I figured we'd see probably 30, 35 basis points. I didn't think we'd see this much because, I mean, what are markets expecting? And again, if you look at the breakdown, it is what it is. So, all right, my friends, I'll see you guys tomorrow, and we'll see if we get some recovery. Make sure you join me then. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.